You know the 7 habits of highly effective people? Well, have you heard of the 7 habits of highly effective small businesses? Probably not, because I made them up. But having worked with over 2,000 small businesses to systemize their operations, there are 7 routines that I have seen make the difference between dissolving into chaos and a business that can run without you. Each of these habits is incredibly simple, free to start executing, and something you can add into your business by the time you finish this video. So let's start off with the very first habit, which is taking time to reflect when you're doing something new or significant for your business. Most common examples of when you want to add reflection will be when you have quarterly or monthly milestones, or when you have major projects or client work wrapping up. For an example of what this might look like, let me tell you a story of one of my clients. They did a restaurant training business. So they would go into restaurants and do on-site facilitation for bartenders and waitstaff and so on. When they would go in for these all-day intensives, they would do a ton of work with the team and then they'd leave. And that was it. One of the things we added into their process when working together here at ProcessDriven is we added a reflection. So then after each intensive on-site training day, they had a team meeting, which took about 15 minutes, that reflected on what went right in that training, what went wrong in that training, and what do we need to do differently to make training better the next time. Because this is a high-ticket service and that training was so time-intensive to put together, these kinds of improvements could make or break future client satisfaction and ultimately ended up saving the team a bunch of time. That's the kind of hidden genius that's just floating around our minds when we have some kind of major project. And unless you carve out space to get that genius, it could be lost forever. But speaking of lost forever, the second habit we want to install into our business is making sure great ideas of any kind, wherever they come from, are not lost forever by making sure we routinely use an idea backlog or an idea list. I talk about this more in this video up top if you're curious about how you'd set this up. But an idea list is essentially a spot where you can put things that you want to do, but you're just not sure when you might do them. They feel a little unclear, a little fuzzy. When we have these fuzzy ideas, immature teams tend to just commit to them. They say, hey, boss had this idea to start a podcast. Let's stop everything to start a podcast. When we do that again and again and again and again, we end up with a business that gets nothing important done because we're working on a lot of chaotic shit, frankly. But if we're the opposite and we delay and delay and delay and don't act on new ideas, we also suffer as a team because that great idea to, hey, maybe start using Claude Cowork never gets implemented because we're so busy in the mundane day-to-day things that innovation, we got no time for it. We want to aim for a bit of a Goldilocks spot right in between. We want to take on new things, but only when we actually have time for them and when they align with our priorities. To make that easily possible, the best tool I've seen is making sure you're routinely using that ideas list. But the ideas list has a risk of becoming this place where ideas go to die. If we're not regularly reviewing the ideas and knowing what's important to our business to get done, we might run the risk of becoming old and stale and not really innovating forward. So the third routine is here to counteract that. I call this habit the monthly CEO review, and it's something I've started in my business that I find my clients find value in as well. What it looks like is every month I have kind of a pre-scripted template, if you will, of me to reflect on what is important for me in this small business. What's our top bottleneck for growth? What projects are important? And what do I view as the top priority moving forward? This kind of update usually takes me anywhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour, which might feel insane for small teams. But in my view, if my team doesn't know what is important to me and what is important to the big picture of the business, how can I expect them to make micro decisions that align with that big picture direction? And come to think of it, I'm going to be spending this hour either way looking at our metrics, making sure we're on track. So I might as well take the extra time to communicate it because it helps my team be a part of the mission we're working towards. Here's an example of what my monthly CEO update actually looks like. So it's a combination of quick factoids in a bullet and then a voice note. This voice note is not something you really have to do, but I find it important when I'm trying to build community and culture in my team. If I'm just typing, I can be really blunt. And to be honest, when I'm speaking, I'm also blunt, but less blunt because at least you can hear in my tone, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just saying these sales metrics matter. But speaking of sharing and alignment, this fourth habit is one that is so simple, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit I was really bad at it. You see, for the longest time, I had this habit of creating budgets or goals for my business and then not ever looking at them again. I would create this goal like, I want to do 2 million this year. And then I would sit down, create it all out, and then never actually go back on a monthly basis to see where we're at until it was the end of the year. And I was like, oh shit, we're not going to make it. And that is not good. So what I would suggest to you is making sure you have a habit for logging actuals as well as goals. So you might view this as 2 habits, one for setting goals and one for adding actuals. I'm going to combine them into one and be a little sneaky here. To make the most of this habit, I would make sure you have a key metrics tracker of some kind for your team to use. If you don't have one, I have my free template for one. It looks something like this. It's in the description below. You can grab it for free. But you want to build a habit of tracking these actuals on a regular basis. For me, I track numbers weekly and monthly, and those combined really tell me the big picture of where the business is at. You can watch my video up at the top if you're struggling to figure out what should your key metrics be. But one of the biggest shortcomings of putting so much emphasis on metrics is sometimes we lose sight of the soft stuff, of what do our clients really experience. And if you are in business for any longer than a month, I can guarantee you have blind spots. I have blind spots when it comes to your client experience. So what is this, 6th, 5th? The next habit we have to track is doing a test of your customer experience as a routine, recurring thing. Here at ProcessDriven, we have a task for the customer experience people to test customer experience, the sales people to test sales, and yada, yada, yada. What we have them do is actually go through as if they were a stranger on the internet, use an incognito tab, and pretend to try to buy from ProcessDriven. Where do they go? What do they look at? How does the checkout look? Does the buttons all function? To make it easier to do a pure test, we make sure they have a 100% off coupon code that's temporary just for their testing period. And we make sure they're using a dummy email address. So that way they get the full email sequences that also are getting received after they join our list. If you were someone with a public website, you should have a routine to check your own website at least once a quarter. If you have a help docs, make sure you are routinely reviewing your own help docs. Don't wait for someone to report that something's wrong. You should be simulating that experience on behalf of your customer. So you're doing your own quality assurance, QA, rather than waiting for the customer to tell you something is wrong. Now, will doing this prevent you from ever having anything wrong or ever not having a typo in your stuff? No, you won't. But it will catch a lot of things. You will be shocked and sad and also maybe a little happy by the amount of stuff you will find by just testing your own resources. And if you're struggling to figure out how exactly do I create routines to check all this stuff, watch this video up here, which will really help you through it. Now, the next challenge that tends to come up when we start talking about routinifying and making things ritualistic is, oh my God, I already have enough on my plate. Now I have to do this too. The truth is, making sure your business gets better and better over time does require effort. Shocker, right? It's like staying in shape requires effort. If we do nothing, entropy happens. We get out of shape. Our business falls apart. Our SOPs collect dust. This is a little bit of extra work, but it's not work that you necessarily need to own. And so the 6th habit I would install into your business, if I was trying to systemize it today, is defaulting to delegating ownership. I think the best way to explain this one is actually just to give you an example. So one of my clients is a manufacturing company that manufactures food. They have a whole facility, website branding, all this stuff. But like many of the smaller businesses I've worked with, this highly successful business had this bad habit of defaulting to ownership. So what that means is when there was something that was unclear who's in charge of it, the business owner became the person who was in charge of it. And that became very problematic when that owner had to take some time off, forgot something, got pulled into more important priorities. These orphaned responsibilities ended up getting ignored because the owner really didn't have time to focus on it. One common area where this tended to happen for them, and probably for you, is new hire onboarding, customer retention, and sometimes even marketing. Not for them, but for other industries, I've also seen this happen, unfortunately, with client engagements. You might have a consultant who's in charge of the project, but if that consultant ever drops the ball, there's no one holding them to account. So to fix this kind of situation, we want to start assigning ownership. One process we have here at ProcessDriven is actually the ownership of this YouTube pipeline. So I am obviously the person creating these videos. I'm the crazy one with ideas for a lot of things, and we have a whole team who's helping us make these not look like shit. Thank you guys. But there is one person who is not me who's in charge of making sure all of us get our shit together, and that is Mariah. And Mariah's job is to basically herd the cats and make sure we get our responsibilities done. But this wasn't always the case. Back in the earlier days of running my business, I felt in charge of YouTube because I happened to be the one creating it. And so I would be the one chasing thumbnail designers and making sure our edits got done on time, making sure the video uploaded. That's the kind of mental load that would just be drowning me as an owner and keeping me from the important things I'm supposed to be doing, like releasing the AI edition of our Process-Driven Foundations training. So what you want to think about for your business is for the key areas of responsibility where there might not be tasks, but there's worry, there's stress, there's double checking. Can you put someone explicitly in charge of that kind of double checking inside your business? If you're struggling with this or you can't quite visualize it, check out the Blueprint webinar in the description below. It talks about how to do this inside your business in a bonus YouTube video that you won't find here on actual YouTube, free in the description below. Now, speaking of the Blueprint to systemize small businesses, there is one other habit that I think is a little bit more advanced, but it's something that if you have the data is such a valuable way to make sure your business gets better and better over time, which is to measure how time is being spent. And I know. People don't like their time tracking, but in this video up here, I highlight how valuable time tracking has been to my business to making sure my time is being spent in the right way. When we work with clients to systemize their business, we make sure all of them have a way to measure how much effort in their business is going towards routine maintenance, how much effort is going towards putting out fires, and how much effort is going towards improving the business overall. When you have a systemized business, you should have anywhere between 60 to 80% of your team's collective effort being focused on routine, day-to-day things that you can see coming that keep the business humming. The remaining 20 to 40% of your time can be divided up between reactive stuff, meaning responding to emergencies, and improvements, meaning shiny objects. That's what we're aiming for when it comes to an overall systemized business. We want to be able to see things coming, define ownership, know what it takes to keep our business humming forward. So we're not innovating all the time and frantically trying to figure out what's going on. And we're not spending all our time responding to emergencies either. Turning this into a habit requires, number one, you have the data tracked. You're either tracking your time or tracking your tasks. If you don't do this, this is something we help all of our clients with. Book a call with us in the description. That's your first step. The second step is to create a routine task to review this data. At our team, we review this monthly, and we actually put it into a key metrics tracker, which again, if you don't have a key metrics tracker, I also have one of those for free in the description below. There is just so much free stuff for this video. You've got no excuse not to take action. But speaking of action, that's really what all of these habits are about. Every single one of these are not about mindset and theory and visualization, which is great. But at the end of the day, if you want a business that acts differently, you need to act differently too. And that's kind of the crux of the process-driven approach to systemizing businesses, is if we can shape action, everything else follows. So go ahead and try it out for yourself by using these 7 tips for free in your business right now. If you don't have the dashboards yet, focus on the first 6, and then make sure you're doing the other essentials when it comes to running a business like a small business CEO by watching this video here on the end screen. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the process.